Welcome back to American Agenda. President Trump has threatened to withhold funding to two states, Michigan and Nevada, who have announced plans to expand access to mail-in voting amid the pandemic. Now, he claims that mail-in ballots are more susceptible to fraud, which brings us to our tweet of the day. The president, writing, quote, "State of Nevada thinks that they can send out illegal vote by mail ballots, creating a great voter fraud scenario for the state and the U.S. They can't. If they do, I think I can hold up funds to the state. Sorry, but you must not cheat in elections." Now, the president was asked about all of this by reporters yesterday. He seemed to walk it back a little bit, especially as far as the funding is concerned.
Well, I have very specific funding. I just spoke with the governor. We didn't discuss that. They'll be finding out very soon if it's necessary. I don't think it's going to be necessary.
Obviously wants to use money as leverage if he needs to or can. It's unclear now if the president is trying to accomplish in the first place. So let's welcome in our A-plus panel for the day, former chairman of the Associated Republicans of Texas, George C., and chairman of the Committee to Defend the President, Ted Harvey. George, you've got a lot of stuff going on there as far as mail-in ballots. You got the Attorney General of the state saying, we don't want you to use mail-in ballots unless there's a legitimate reason. And then you had the federal judge in San Antonio saying, well, not having immunity to COVID-19 qualifies. So what's your stance on this?
Well, the appellate court overruled the trial court, but this is the oldest case of he said, she said between Republicans and Democrats there practically is in the modern era. Republicans screaming voter fraud and Democrats screaming voter suppression. And the reality is we all want to get to the point where every citizen who is able to cast a vote is able to do so, proving who they are. And the question is how to go about doing that. And that's a subject that's open to reasonable debate on it. But we in Texas are very familiar with voter fraud. Lyndon Johnson stole the 1948 Senate election over Coke Stevenson, our governor, by making about 15,000 phony ballots down in South Texas. And then you've got the classic 1960 presidential election and the controversy over the mayor of Chicago.
Cook County.
Dead people voting up there. So I think you've got to do both. And the question is, how do you get there? And that's where all the squabbling starts.
So, George, let's go ahead and pivot to Michigan right now. I mean, the president narrowly won there in 2016. Now he's threatening to not move forward with funding as the state's in a world of hurt between the pandemic and then failing dams. Could this backfire on him?
Yeah, let's set aside the legality of whether he could do that or not for a minute and look at the politics. I think threatening to withhold funding from a state that's on its back and really hurting right now with this flooding and the virus is probably not a good idea politically. I think he ought to walk that back very quickly and just say that any effort to basically foment and encourage voter fraud is going to be stamped out ruthlessly, either through the executive branch or the court system. But withholding funding is probably the wrong lever to pull.
Okay, Ted, we didn't mean to leave you out of this. The mail-in ballot thing, there are a lot of people fearful of ballot harvesting. Could you talk about why that's such a threat?
Well, it's interesting because in Colorado, we passed all mail ballots in 2014. And I can tell you that it has been fraught with all kinds of controversy. You can go to any major apartment complex anywhere in Colorado and you can see stacks and stacks of ballots that have not been delivered. The people don't live there anymore. They are not being forwarded, and anybody can go in and pick up those ballots and fill them out and send them in. Is that against the law? Yes. Do people do it all the time? Without a doubt. They also go into senior citizens' homes and get the ballots from the senior citizens and collect those and harvest those. And that is an issue that is fraught with fraud as well. So I think you can look at Colorado and there's plenty of examples to show that there has been fraud done in Colorado and other states that do mail-in ballots. And I think the Republican Party and the president has every right to be concerned about this going into the 2020 election when the Democrats are going to do everything they possibly can to defeat him.
Ted, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure we had the time to get it. I had a friend that ran Mitt Romney's campaign in Colorado for the state and said that the Democrats had such great organizations, even within apartment complex. Is this partially a concern about the organizations themselves?
Well, if you didn't have mail-in ballots and having stacks of unopened and unfilled out ballots sitting around, then you wouldn't have to worry about who was more organized or not.
Yeah.
When you have ballots laying all over the place, that is of concern. And every American should be concerned that their vote is being canceled out by somebody sitting at a table filling out a bunch of people's ballots that were sitting around in an apartment complex.
You know, George, people on the other side would say, we're in the midst of a pandemic. Getting together in large numbers just isn't a good idea. You know, there's the risk of mailing it in and fraud there. But talk about that tension for us.
Well, it's a very real tension, and it's a fair comment, but I don't think it's that complicated. It's not rocket science when you have early voting like we already have, and you do have proper methodologies for absentee voting. We here in Texas have never quite understood how it's that difficult a hurdle to just have some form of proof of who you are, and encourage everybody and anybody to go vote, but be able to prove up that you have the right to do it and you're voting one ballot. And so I've never understood why this is such a hot area of debate. We ought to encourage everybody to go vote. We ought to have them have a minimal requirement to prove they are who they are, and they ought to be able to go vote. And we ought to stamp out voter fraud every chance we can get.
All right, I think this is a week that it's getting back to work. Yesterday, or on Sunday, this coming Sunday, what do you look to be different in the church?
Oh, in the church. Well, we're still going to continue on with our online services, so that's not going to change.
You know, a lot of people saying people need to get back to church, need to be able to congregate.
Yes, we're not there yet.
Okay.
We're not there yet because meeting together is contingent upon when the school opens, because we meet in
You need to be in the
lower
school.
So, yeah, that's so we're in a holding pattern right now, looking into different options.
Ours is looking at 4th of July weekend.
Okay.
So I think we're going through different steps, and I'm guessing, I don't know yet, but maybe we'll meet outside. But I think a lot of people are really looking forward to getting back.
We are, definitely. I mean, we may do a couple smaller services and build in the social distancing, but that's
there's still a
definitely
risk, and you still have to be careful.
do that soon. Absolutely.
Yeah, so many people together. Well, folks, thanks so much for being with us on American Agenda, and we hope to see you back here tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Bye.